that's okay. Today's video is just going to be me sharing some of the books that I've recently read. I'm going to be sharing the 3 books that I read this month. They're faith books and they were pretty good. One of the books was alright, 2 of the books were excellent. One book, this one, was so good. So they're a little bit more vlog style where I'm just chatting about the book, what I'm thinking of them. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Let me know if you like this type of video where I'm just chatting about the books that I'm reading throughout the month, specifically faith books. And yeah. Hey guys, so I started reading, I'm just trying not to be loud, people are sleeping. I started reading For Women Only and I'm already about halfway through it. Let me see how many pages this book is. Yeah, I'm a little over halfway and I read about 130 pages. And so far, I really am loving this book. It kind of reminds me of these 2 books that I'm going to show here. And I just want to give a quick disclaimer about one of the authors of these 2 books that I'm just going to mention because I feel like I have to mention it because there's a lot of controversy about this author and her husband. And yeah, but this book is it's For Women Only by Shanti Feldhahn, and it's just talking about understanding men. For Women Only, Shanti Feldhahn reveals what every woman, single or married, needs to know. Based on rigorous research with thousands of men, Shanti delivers one eye-opening revelation after another. So she talks about why, for men, respect means more than love. Women crave love and men crave respect, and she kind of also talks about how there's not a lot of Bible in this, but she does mention how Paul mentions how, we women are to submit to the man, and the man is to love his wife because women need love, men need respect. Talks about how he feels deep inside about his role as provider, what it means for a man to be visually wired. Talks about how sex primarily is emotional, not physical for them, and what they wish they could say to women. Everything I've read so far has just been like a light bulb to understanding men, just understanding how men think. And she surveyed thousands of men and interviewed many men and just did this year-long research. So good. And so it just reminded me of these 2 other books that I read, but I do think that she just does a much better job overall. So this book is Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghettis, and it's talking about the differences between men and women and just how we think, and it goes through all the different things that she talks about. But this one's specifically about men, so it's For Women Only. And then there's a book that her and her husband wrote that's called For Men Only, and it's about women. And then this other book I have, which is the one I had to give the little warning about, is called Created to Be His Helpmeet by Debbie Pearl. I just feel like I have to say I don't agree with everything she says, but I do feel like, to me, this book is more of like a last straw. Your marriage is about to end. She's giving you advice like, girl, if you don't do something, you're gonna lose your man. It's gonna be on you. Kind of like that. It's truth with no grace, where sometimes truth with no grace can go a little crazy, and sometimes we can mishandle truth. But this, so far, has been an excellent read. And she includes some of her survey questions, which I've tabbed over here, just so that way I can always go back to them. And I haven't highlighted a ton of things. Oh, here she's talking about just as you need the man in your life to love you unconditionally, even when you're not particularly lovable, your man needs you to demonstrate your respect for him regardless of whether he's meeting your expectations at the moment. And different ways that he needs your respect and how it just builds or tears down the character of a man. I just really love how she put everything into words. And I was gonna listen to this book too, but I started just reading it, and it's such an easy read and very captivating. And yeah, so I got through half the book. I like this part. One of the men that she was talking to. They said, for women, emotions seem to enhance their ability to articulate clearly with words, but for men, emotions inhibit their ability to articulate. Men need to think and ponder on things before they can just talk. Or with us, like women, especially in this book, I think they do a good job explaining how women's thought process and men's thought process are different, where men need to complete their thought and then they can move on to the next. So they have like a waffle brain. They're in one square, then they're in the next, and then the next. Women are like spaghettis, where all our thoughts just intermingle and we're kind of a mess. But an organized, chaotic mess that we understand and other women understand, but men don't understand because they don't think like us. So we can jump from thought to thought, emotion to emotion, and everything connects, but it's not like that for men. So I think this is an excellent book. Whether you are single, married, in a relationship, whatever. I think so far this is going to be a recommendable. Is that a word? It's going to be a book that I will recommend. So we'll see when I finish it. Okay, so I finished this book and it was so good. I really like this book more than the other two books. I just think she kind of covers everything that those authors cover, but in a just more, not simple, but a more understandable way. This is such an easy read, but it's packed with so much information. She includes some of the survey questions in here and quotes from interviews and stuff from some of the men that she interviewed. So I just thought it was a great book overall. And I like at the end when she says just basically how God has given us much power to either tear men up or tear men down or build them up to be the men that he created them to be. So I really enjoyed that. I thought this was so good, super great, a great read. And it was under $10 on Amazon, if I remember correctly. So I'll leave this link down below. I do suggest this. I think it's such a great book. There is one part where I've noticed this in a lot of books that talk about like relationships or whatever, where they talk about a woman's appearance. That type of stuff does not bother me, does not trigger me, but I know some people do get triggered on those topics. So there's that, but I liked everything she had to say. I thought it was very informative and I learned a lot. And yeah, so now to read another book. So I'm currently reading Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus by Nabil Qureshi. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's about a devout Muslim encounters Christianity. This is a book, his testimony, his life basically in words. Here, I'll read the back. Nabil describes his dramatic journey from Islam to Christianity, complete with friendships, investigations, and supernatural dreams along the way. Providing an intimate window into a loving Muslim home. Nabil shares how he developed a passion for Islam before discovering, almost against his will, evidence that Jesus claimed to be God and rose from the dead. I'm also listening to this book. I think if you have the chance to listen to this book versus read it, if you can read it, listen to it on Audible or Spotify, listen to it. The author himself is the narrator, and I think it adds another level to this book and just the emotions you feel. And just, this is an amazing book so far. I'm about 150 pages and I'm exhausted, guys. I worked the last 2 days, and you see them bags. The book is divided up into 10 parts, but I like what he says in the prologue. Was it the prologue or introduction? Okay, so here he says, by entering into my world, I hope Christians will understand their Muslim neighbors and begin to love them as Jesus loves them. The first 2 parts of the book are designed for this purpose, and if they seem pro-Islamic, they are serving their purpose of conveying a past love for my former faith. And I just love that he adds that, because you do see that. Now, he does an excellent job bringing us, the reader, into the Islamic faith and just like his home, and just the culture that they were living in, and you just hear his pride in his family, in his culture, in his faith. And it's a beautiful picture that he paints. It is an intense love of their religion, so I did find that very interesting. But then he also talks about how his American culture was clashing with the Muslim culture and just the eastern side and western side, because the cultures were very different. But you can definitely tell that he is an intelligent man, even from his youth. The way he thought, he seems very intelligent, or was. He has since passed away. He talks about his experience in growing up Muslim, and he explains his parents' faith and just different aspects of the Islamic faith that the general public doesn't know, talking about the prayers, talking about the things that they have to memorize, the portions of scriptures, the portions of their prayers. We also see how, you know, he makes the distinction that, you know, respect was love growing up and things like that. He also touches on prophetic dreams, which is how eventually it is revealed to him. Hopefully these are not like spoiler things. And then he also starts to share more encounters with faith and other Christians, one in high school specifically with a girl that he managed to agitate her, but she invited him to this play that he brought his father along to, and they were able to have conversations about that afterwards. He also in this part discusses his experience as a Muslim during 9/11, after the tragedies of 9/11, just like how his family was targeted or mistreated, their mosque being vandalized, and how their religion of peace, because that's truly how he saw it and a lot of them saw it, was being portrayed as a religion of terror. So now we move into part 3, where we're starting to see God get a hold on him and start working in his life in college. And he meets his friend David, who I'm believing is a big part of his faith journey. This friend challenged him in the textual validity of the Bible, because that was one of the main things that he would always say, is the Bible couldn't be trusted because there were so many translations. So that brings up a whole discussion and a whole part where you see his heart start working, and they're having these talks and having these debates, but he's not admitting it to himself that he's starting to question things. And now I'm in part 4 now, so I'm going to keep reading, but this is also like continuing on with his good friend David, and brought him into a situation where him and his dad can talk freely with a friend of David's that are Bible scholars, 2 of his friends, older men that are there to discuss the Jesus dying on the cross and the historical context behind it, and if that actually happened. So that's where I'm at now, and it is just so fascinating. This book is so good. Definitely a book I'm not done yet, but just from what I've read, I'm 152 pages in. So good. Forward was by Lee Strobel, and there's just a lot of other people. There's a word from his wife, and just remembering Nabil, because he did pass away unfortunately. But just so much good in this book. Even just some of the stuff that they're talking about, I'm like taking notes, because I'm like, these are some things I've never even heard about or thought to discuss when debating against people. Not that I'm a debater, like that's not me. Like I truly think some people have the gift of knowledge and just like spewing it out, like what's called fast thinking. Like I'm not a fast thinker. Like if you ask me a question, I need time to meditate and do my research, where some people can pull up information 1 2 3, and that's not me. So good so far. The way this book is written, I'm invested. I feel like I know him. That's why I'm not calling him the author. He's Nabil. We know each other. We're like this now. So I'm gonna keep reading and enjoying this book, so that way I can come back and chat with you guys. I've been reading it for 2 days already, and it's so good so far. So I'm really enjoying this. All right guys, so another update on the book. So much good is happening. This is such a good book. It's definitely turning out to be one of my favorites. I had my mom start reading it, and she's almost caught up to me, and then I mentioned it to my sister, and she's like, oh, I've read that book, it's one of my favorite books ever. And I was like, oh, yes. So let's catch up. Let me bring you guys back up to speed, talking about how Nabil's good friend David, he really challenges him and challenges his faith. And Nabil wants to know the truth, but he also doesn't want to dishonor his family. You know, I feel like this is a powerful turning point in his life, because now he's going to start investigating what is truth, and he's kind of deciding that he's going to search or do research and try to disprove Jesus' claim to being God, his deity, his death, and his resurrection. So he's gonna do a full investigation on all of these to really see what is true. You see him move to certain points, and then as he keeps going, he decides that he needs to challenge the idea of the Trinity, how God is 3 in 1. And we see his breakdown, and the way that he comes to that conclusion I thought was really interesting because it's very scientific. It kind of clicks for him while he's in class, and I thought that chapter was amazing. And then the next section, I'm so involved that I stopped taking notes, guys. He's kind of gone through his investigations on Jesus and his pieces, and he has a conclusion to those, and talking with his friends and these people that are really mentoring him in his walk. And now he's going to investigate Muhammad and the Quran, and those are the two aspects of the Islam faith that he is going to break down. They go back to his friend's house and they do like some sort of debate, and that is what really opens his eyes to make him realize that he probably doesn't know as much as he thought he did on Muhammad. And so doing research and studying the books that are in his father's library that most Muslims have, that they don't necessarily read, but that other scholars base their information off of, and he starts doing a deep dive and his eyes are opened. He knows that this is going to be a colossal, this is going to be a really big turning point in his life, that it's going to mean something big is going to happen. Something big is going to happen. So I'm really excited as I'm reading this book, and I'm loving it. I'm definitely at least 2/3 of the way, and I'm at page 233, and there are, including the epilogue, is 297. Honestly, reading this book I can get emotional because I know he's no longer alive, but I know he's written other books, so I'm definitely interested in reading more of his work. I'm really loving this book, and yeah, I hope you guys take time this year, buy this book, listen to this book, read it. I think it needs to be read. All right, guys, so I finished this book. So good, excellent read, listen. If you can get your hands on it, if you can get your hands on the audio book, definitely read it. I think it's definitely worth it. It's such a great book. He has such a great testimony. And the only thing I will say is that in the newer editions of the book, the epilogue is updated versus the audiobook. So there's more information in the epilogue in the book. And then there's what's it called? Remembering Nabil? Is that what it was called? Remembering Nabil, conversation between David Wood and Nabil Qureshi. The audio version is longer. This is like a summarization of their conversation, but the audiobook has like an hour-long convo with him and his friend. So I would suggest that as a read. But this is hands down one of my favorite books that I've read this year, that I've read in my life. Definitely such a great memoir. He has a great story to tell, just a great testimony of loving God and truly seeking to worship the one true God. So I'm just gonna keep it short and sweet now and just say that I think this is a book you should read. Hello. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me. I connected my mic this time. Hopefully we are okay. Yeah. So this is the last book that I just finished reading. It's called The Heart of Singleness, How to Be Single and Satisfied by Andrea Trevana. And I finished it. It was a quick read, under 100 pages. And I thought it was good. It wasn't life-changing or anything. But it was a quick read. I liked the points that she had to make and just her experience that she shared and just the different things that she talked about. The book was 7 chapters, and she went through the gift of singleness, finding a man, deceived, different ways that we run from God, why we should run to God, singleness at a gift, and she goes back to that, and then being satisfied in all situations. And then she also has an appendix, in the appendix, just answering certain questions. What's wrong with sex outside of marriage? What's wrong with marrying a non-Christian? And then helping single friends. So different testimonies from her friends, I believe. So she kind of starts off with how Jesus is the man that we're looking for. He is the one that we should find our satisfaction in. Like, he's the only one that can satisfy us. And she kind of goes through how God works everything out for good, for his good, and ultimately his good is what's going to bring us closer to the image of Christ. Like, his good is his good in our life, whether that's circumstances, whether that's him not giving us something we desire or giving us something we desire, a trial. Everything that God brings into our life is for the purpose of making us more like Christ. And I really like how she talked about that. She talks about delighting in God, and also how we can become self-focused and think that God's goodness is conditional, kind of like, well, because I'm a good Christian, God's going to give me the desires of my heart. It's like, no, our hearts are deceitful, and he's going to work everything out for his good. So our desires need to line up with his desires, and ultimately that's, being more like Christ. And then she kind of ends the book, like I said, with just, she ends the book with just some truths that we can just use in different situations. I wanted to read this quote. When she's talking about delighting in Christ, she says, "It's not that single people delight in Jesus because they can't delight in a spouse. It's that every Christian delights in Jesus, finds in him that they have been given all they ever really wanted, and then uses everything else they have, singleness, marriage, children, career, and so on, to serve him." So just kind of like how she brings that in to just like include everyone. And then, yeah, that was the book. It was super short, under 100 pages. I think it was 77 pages. So it was a super quick read. And yeah, that's the book.